The crisp morning air carried the faint scent of blooming flowers as the sun rose over the iconic skyline of London. The golden rays of dawn painted the Buckingham Palace gates in a warm glow, casting long shadows across the meticulously manicured lawns. Among the sea of tourists and locals, one figure stood out: Private Thomas Whitaker, a 27-year-old royal guard, stationed at his post with the unwavering discipline that had been drilled into him over years of service. Private Whitaker's uniform was immaculate, his ceremonial bearskin hat perched perfectly atop his head, and his rifle held firmly at his side. His posture was rigid, his expression stoic, and his gaze fixed on some distant point ahead. To the casual observer, he was a statue, a symbol of British tradition and military precision. But beneath the surface, his mind wandered, as it often did during the long hours of duty. He thought of his family, his dreams, and the quiet life he hoped to build once his service was complete. The palace grounds were bustling with activity. Tourists from every corner of the globe had gathered to witness the changing of the guard, a spectacle that never failed to captivate. Cameras clicked, children giggled, and the air was filled with the hum of excited chatter. Among the crowd, an elderly man caught Whitaker's attention. He was dressed in a faded military blazer adorned with medals, his posture slightly hunched, and his movements slow and deliberate. He leaned heavily on a wooden cane, his face etched with lines that spoke of a life well lived, but also well worn. The man found a spot on a nearby bench, his eyes scanning the palace gates with a mixture of nostalgia and sorrow. As the minutes passed, Whitaker noticed something unusual. The man's shoulders began to tremble, and soon, silent tears streamed down his weathered cheeks. He clutched a photograph in his hand, his fingers trembling as he stared at it, with a look of profound grief. Whitaker's training screamed at him to remain still, to maintain his composure, and to uphold the strict protocols of the Queen's Guard. But something about the man's presence tugged at his heartstrings. The medals on the man's chest told a story of bravery and sacrifice, and the photograph in his hand hinted at a loss that had left an indelible mark on his soul. As the crowd continued to buzz around him, Whitaker found himself at a crossroads. He had always prided himself on his discipline, his ability to remain unshaken in the face of distractions. But this was different. This wasn't a tourist trying to make him laugh, or a child attempting to snap a selfie. This was a man who had served his country, a man who was clearly carrying the weight of a heavy burden. Time seemed to slow as Whitaker weighed his options. The rules were clear: no movement, no interaction, no breaking of stance. But the humanity within him urged him to act, to offer some small gesture of comfort to a fellow soldier who had given so much. With a deep breath, Whitaker made his decision. In a move that would soon be talked about around the world, he took a single step forward, breaking his rigid stance. The crowd gasped, their cameras snapping furiously as they captured the unprecedented moment. Whitaker's fellow guards exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of surprise and concern, but they remained at their posts, trusting their comrade's judgment. Whitaker approached the elderly man, his boots crunching softly against the gravel path. He stopped a few feet away, his rifle still at his side, and offered a solemn nod. The man looked up, his tear-filled eyes meeting Whitaker's. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, in a voice choked with emotion, the man whispered, "Thank you." Whitaker's heart swelled with compassion. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, neatly folded handkerchief, which he handed to the man. It was a simple gesture, but one that spoke volumes. The man accepted it with a trembling hand, his gratitude evident in his eyes. The crowd, now fully captivated by the scene, watched in silence as the two men shared a moment of connection that transcended words. Whitaker's actions were a powerful reminder that even in the most rigid of roles, there is room for humanity, for compassion, and for understanding. As the man wiped his tears, he began to speak. His voice was soft but steady, carrying the weight of years of untold stories. He spoke of his service, of the friends he had lost, and of the family he had left behind. He spoke of the photograph in his hand, a picture of his son, who had also served in the military and had been killed in action just a year earlier. Whitaker listened intently, his heart breaking for the man who had endured so much. He realized then that his decision to break protocol wasn't just about offering comfort, it was about honoring the sacrifices of those who had come before him, about acknowledging the pain that often goes unseen. When the man finished speaking, Whitaker saluted him, a gesture of respect and gratitude. The man returned the salute, his hand shaking but his resolve unwavering. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing across the palace grounds. As Whitaker returned to his post, he felt a sense of pride, unlike any he had ever known. He had upheld the values of the Queen's Guard in a way that no one could have anticipated. He had shown that even in the face of strict tradition, there is always room for kindness, for empathy, and for humanity. The story of Private Thomas Whitaker and the elderly veteran spread like wildfire. News outlets around the world picked up the story, hailing it as a testament to the power of compassion in the most unexpected of places. Social media was flooded with messages of support and admiration, with many calling Whitaker a hero, not for his military service, but for his willingness to break the rules in the name of humanity. In the days that followed, Whitaker received letters from veterans and their families, thanking him for his actions and sharing their own stories of loss and resilience. The elderly veteran, whose name was revealed to be Colonel Arthur Pembroke, became a symbol of the sacrifices made by those who served their country. Whitaker's superiors, initially concerned about the breach of protocol, ultimately praised him for his actions. They recognized that his decision to step forward had not only honored the values of the Queen's Guard, but had also brought attention to the struggles faced by veterans around the world. As for Whitaker, he continued his service with the same dedication and discipline that had always defined him, but he carried with him a newfound understanding of the importance of compassion, of the need to see beyond the uniform, and recognize the humanity in everyone he encountered. The story of the Royal Guard and the crying veteran became a legend, a reminder that even in the most rigid of roles, there is always room for kindness. It was a lesson that resonated far beyond the gates of Buckingham Palace, touching the hearts of people around the world and inspiring them to look beyond the surface and see the humanity in us all. And so, as the sun set over London, casting a golden glow over the palace gates, Private Thomas Whitaker stood at his post, his heart full and his spirit unbroken. He had done more than uphold tradition. He had honored it in the most profound way possible, by showing that even in the face of duty, there is always room for love.